All right, it's showtime. Welcome back to your daily dose of Planet Cool Stuff. Today we're going to be talking about some topics you can see up right there. Talking Hogwarts Legacy on the Switch, the need or not need for DVD and Blu-ray commentaries. Let's talk best of prequels, and there's a few other things we'll get to, including an action figure spotlight. I kind of want to talk about this whole episode as the expectations of entertainment. What are your expectations when it comes to entertainment? Is it to always constantly be enthralled? Is it to be just blown away with every iteration? And when it doesn't meet that mark, are you destroyed and absolutely left in shambles because your expectations weren't met? This is the world that we live in sometimes, and as of late that's what it feels like. I want to give a shout out to my friend in the chat here. It's over halfway to the Kickstarter goal, off to a great start. I agree, and we're of course talking about the Planet Cool Stuff Kickstarter, our quest to see season 1, all 13 episodes, cemented on DVD and Blu-ray. We are halfway there. A lot of people have jumped on already. Early backers, I love day one backers because it just shows the enthusiasm they have for the subject matter. It's really nice to see people excited about something that you've worked so hard to create for so long and so often. It's kind of just like that little bit of, it was all worth it. It was worth all those long hours and just getting those edits just right and the arduous travel schedule and everything else in between. So I hope you're having a great day. This is a bit of a lunchtime broadcast, and if you're not catching it while we're live, I hope you do enjoy it when we do find you, whether that's your afternoon snack, whether it's your evening nightcap, or tomorrow morning. We're here for you again, daily dose of Planet Cool Stuff in support of the Kickstarter that is now live, like I said. So we got the topics that we're talking about there on the side of your screen. Let's jump right to the first topic, and that's Hogwarts Legacy on Switch. Now, obviously, there's been a lot of expectations for Hogwarts Legacy, not just the Switch version, but all the versions. It's an open kind of world RPG for Harry Potter fans. What a great environment to be in, spell casting, exploring, adventure, mythical creatures. What could go wrong? Well, how about the technical expectations on the hardware to deliver that seamless, much needed Harry Potter experience? Again, what are the expectations of your entertainment when you want to try to create a world like this? How much give and take are you going to go into it? Are you going to forgive stuff that happens because it isn't able to deliver this wonderful world that you've either read in the books when it comes to Harry Potter, or the wonderful movies that you've seen? And now I guess the TV show? What do you guys feel about that TV show? Did you know that Warner Brothers is making a TV show now on Harry Potter? Pretty cool. Pretty cool. They're going to, I guess, go back all the way to the beginning and lay out the series. I guess, do we need that remake? I don't know. Maybe it'll be closer to the book. I'm curious how it will be different than the movies. I'm a big fan of the movies. I was very excited to hear about Hogwarts Legacy, but almost in the same breath of the excitement that I had, I started, the first kind of bit of research I saw was all the technical limitations and the glitches, and now it's come on the Switch. And believe me, nobody um, is unaware of the Switch's limitations when it comes to technical specifications. We know that it is the least powered console of this generation. It's almost a previous generation at this point. There are, I mean, if the Xbox One S has limitations and have to have locked frame rates and motion blurring and all these other things, what is going to happen for the Switch? Well, I guess it's locked at 720p, and it's not as bad as people would expect from what I'm told. I haven't played it yet. I am curious, but it is a pricey option. And this is where we're going to get into the entertainment expectations. But walls pop up. You get stuck in walls as they arrive and appear and disappear. Objects kind of come around out of nowhere. So, like, the procedural generation of the world isn't quite up to snuff on the Switch. I mean, I guess there's only, what, 4 gigabytes, is it, of visual RAM in the Switch, and it's using like 3.5. So it's taxing the system pretty hard. And so, the biggest question I ask is, well, does it need to be on the Switch? Well, the financial backers will say, yes, of course we need Harry Potter on the Switch. It's got a huge user base. And that's code for saying we want to make as much money off of it as possible. So please bring us Harry Potter on the Switch. Hey, Silver Knight Kyle. Good to see you, my friend. It's been a while since I've been here. Glad you're back to the party. I don't have a PS5. I don't have the latest iteration of the Xbox. So my only way of playing Harry Potter, the Hogwarts Legacy game, is on Switch. But I don't know that I want to drop that kind of cash on something that's going to be buggy. And then is it actually a financial proposition? Would I buy it if it was $30? Because right now I think it's 60 American. Would I buy it for $20, $15, 10? I mean, I kind of want to try it, but how forgiving are we of our entertainment, right? How lenient are we? What are our expectations? Are they unfairly blown out of the water when it comes to known IP, unknown IP? This is the other thing I like about the new, right? And I talked about it on the last stream that I did. The love of the new to rinse away the expectations and comfort. Except for when you want something new, you better get something new and not something that's tried and rehashed or formulaic or derivative. You don't want something that is a mishmash, some mashed potato, the mashed potato version of Star Wars. I don't want that. Or like the kiddie version of, you know, Game of Thrones. You want something that feels new, that feels fresh, and that's exceedingly rare in the world that we live in with the amount of entertainment we have. So, Hogwarts Legacy, right? How much are you willing to put up to get that authentic Harry Potter experience on the Switch, knowing that it doesn't have the technical prowess that you need to pull it off? And it sounds like the PlayStation 5 and Xbox are having trouble as well doing that, although it's getting better. So it's something you've got to ask yourself, is it worth it? And again, is it worth it in the ecosystem that we have where there is so much out there? I think for me it's a price thing. I think if it goes on sale, I think I would probably be inclined to take a look at it. I think I would look at it probably for the under $30 mark, but there's so much that I want to play that I don't need to jump into it right now. And maybe by then there's an alternate reality. This also kind of begs the question of, what are system mover games? What games have come out where you didn't have the console and you're like, oh, I'm going to get the console now just for this one game? My longstanding rule when it comes to buying consoles is I only want. Okay, well, it's not that I only want, because this is going to be immediately erased. My definition of a good console is there's got to be 10 killer games for the console for it to be a success to me. Okay, that's a pretty low bar because most consoles have less than 10 games. A lot of people might struggle saying, well, I don't know if the Wii has 10 games. It does. Okay, and that includes indie titles, digital stuff like that. Whatever you feel to you is a killer app, as they call it. What's the killer app? What is a killer game title for you that is worthy of investing that amount in the hardware, right? They're selling razor blades, not razors, right? Of course, the console in this case is a pretty big, expensive razor, but it's those razor blades, that software that they really get you now. Of course, it's the add-ons within that software, the premium experiences, those in-app purchases, those subscriptions, those memberships, those season passes. What games are going to move a system for you? I think on the Switch, I think it was Mario Kart alone was enough for me, because I could just see the possibility of that. And that's saying it, having it on the Wii U, which wasn't drastically different by any means. It was just, I knew it was going to be a better online environment. And frankly, just the whole idea of the Switch finally not having to compete with the handheld library, which always seemed to have the games that I wanted, but I don't like playing on a handheld mode. Being able to play everything on the TV or on the go, if I was able to adapt my mentality, my curmudgeon-y ways of how I like to game. There just seemed to be a greater plethora of games that I could play on the Switch, and I thought, well, at least Mario Kart's going to be awesome. JT saying, I got a Switch this year because of the new Zelda game, and I have no regrets. You're talking Tears of the Kingdom, I take it, not Breath of the Wild. We currently have Breath of the Wild. The deal that I have with my son is, if he beats Breath of the Wild, I will buy Tears of the Kingdom for him. No questions asked. I'll just buy it. Flat out, done. You want the next game in the series, you don't have to wait for your birthday. You don't have to wait for Christmas. Not like when I was growing up, because that's what I had to do. I just said, man, just put the effort in, put the time in, And I'm trying to motivate him to do this. And he gets the next game for free. But he likes to bounce around between a lot of games. He loves Splatoon. Splatoon is a big game for me too. I love Splatoon 3. It is such a killer game. Pikmin 3 is also a really great game. So for Nintendo, I mean, it's no secret that the first party titles are so good. And if you like Nintendo's first party titles, it's probably enough over the life of the system to sell you on it, which is kind of what I bought into, right? Hey, Courtney51 says, hey, B-Man, nice seeing you, my friend. He says, at this point, it's definitely the Spider-Man games in the PS5 for me. You know, I got to tell you, I played Spider-Man on PS4. Still got to work my way through it, but what a lovely experience. In the same way that I loved in Lego City Undercover, just driving around and experiencing the Lego world, I love just swinging as Spider-Man through the city. And I'm sure it's only that much better with this most recent game on PS5. And I've seen all the screenshots. The graphics just blow me away. I don't know that my brain is ready for such visuals. It's just so good. All right, Silver Knight Kyle is jumping in now. He's saying Harry Potter and He-Man versus Godzilla and Shredder versus Betty Boop and the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. That is a crazy smash up demolition derby. You might have to drop me a line. I don't know what that is referring to. Oh, that would be the ultimate game, is what he's saying. Well, that would be an interesting game. I don't know if we can play crossover. What would be the most fun crossover? What's the best three-way crossover? And what's the best three-way crossover we can think of with all the different IP that we love? All right. And how taxing is that going to be on the hardware limitations? What are the expectations? The expectations on this Harry Potter versus He-Man versus Godzilla, Shredder, Betty Boop, and Stay Puft Marshmallow. I love that Betty Boop's just thrown in there. The expectations for a game like that are off the chart because it's just such a wacky mashup. You know, watch out, it's Wacky World with He-Man and Harry Potter team up to take on Godzilla and Shredder. I don't know what the expectations are on the hardware or on the content, but there's a lot of characters you've got to nail, and what is that experience when you get that right? So it may be the ultimate game, it may not be. But what are our expectations with this stuff? Is it fair? Are we being too hard on ourselves? Are we being too hard on the content creators? You know, I make movies and stuff, and I don't ever feel like what I make is good enough, right? That's just part of the problem of being a creator. Sometimes people call it imposter syndrome. God, I can't even speak today. I have trouble speaking to you guys every morning now. Imposter syndrome, you know, is it good enough for everybody out there? And then a lot of people enjoy it and they embrace it. But like, is everything good enough? Do we fool ourselves into loving stuff because of our expectations? Do we lower the bar? Do you ever have that moment when you're watching a movie or playing a game where you're like, oh, I wish this was better, and you kind of like try to like psych yourself up into it again, where you try to tell yourself it's better than it is, but you feel it inside? Like Jay says, you know, you've got that gut feeling that you can't argue with. Do you ever have that? And then you kind of believe it, like that pathological need to convince yourself? I felt it before. And then sometimes time heals it, right? Maybe you're just too close to it. Maybe not. I'm going to jump on to the next topic, and that's DVD commentary tracks. Christopher Nolan was discussed recently because a lot of people want to see commentary tracks for his films. They have famously stopped appearing since Batman Begins. I want to know what you guys think. Did you ever get into the whole DVD, Blu-ray, director or cast commentary track? It's not as prevalent as it once was with all the digital platforms nowadays, because right, you just stream a movie, you don't really get an option to check out the director's commentary track or the cast commentary track. And I guess Chris Nolan says he doesn't like doing them because two things kind of happen. One, he wants to communicate an idea about a scene, and he's only got the length of the runtime of the scene to express it before it's on to the next scene, and you basically get one shot to talk about it. Now, you watch the film multiple times as well, so you get multiple takes of audio that might get spliced together, in which case his full idea is never expressed. I see where he's coming from, but at the same time, and the article I read is on Slash Film, if you want to check it out, because we're trying to preserve the knowledge and the understanding and the approach to media, because it's disappearing with so much more digital production happening and less physical media being, bought, there's this like kind of great evaporation that's going to take place where everything we love is invisible, right? So all us physical media fans that have the VHSs, DVDs, and Blu-rays, we can access that anytime. But you know what it's like when you go to look for a film and you can't find it anywhere. Like you can't even find it anywhere to buy, let alone stream as part of your subscriptions. That's an irritating feeling. It's a scary feeling. Well, how come I can't find this obscure TV show from the 80s that I loved, or this movie that defines me? How dare it not be available for me to check out? John, that must be you, right? You got the Meldo reference there. That's Meldo's voice you're hearing. I always hear Meldo's voice. It usually comes around 3 a.m. when the objects in the room start moving. You don't know who Meldo is? Check out the Jay and Rob Toy Show from last year. It was an interesting ordeal. I forget where I was. Oh, DVD commentary track. So it's a lost art, I think. I like doing them. I've done them for Nintendo Quest. I think I did it with Jay. And when DVDs first came out, I think I got my DVD player in 1999. That was kind of like the first thing I did. I mean, I bought movies that I had already watched, so it wasn't like I'm going to buy a new movie. It was more like, I want to preserve this. I want to have this movie. I think GoldenEye would be an example. I want to have GoldenEye in the best visual representation as possible. But I wanted to hear the commentary track, and Ghostbusters in particular was fun to sit down and watch because it's almost like a documentary where you get to sit back and learn about how things were done and the choices that were made. It's kind of like a behind the scenes. It's a little bit of revealing, but it's limited to the runtime of the film. So it's only going to be an hour and a half, for better or worse. And it's just talking. So it's not like a great insight. You don't get to see anything, but you do get to hear some insights, which I sorely miss. I hope the commentary tracks somehow make a comeback. I love it. AJ from Still Will here is saying, I could see how commentary tracks would interest other filmmakers, young and old, but I've never really got into listening to them, to be honest. AJ, you should definitely check them out, my friend, because there's a lot of writer stuff, a lot of script, a lot of development notes, a lot of this is how it was written, here's how it ended up, here's why we changed it, here's why it didn't work on the page. Commentary, which I think if you're interested in the entertainment world at all, or if you have a fascination with your favorite film, it just really pulls back the curtain on the thing that you love. And I don't know if Spielberg does commentary tracks. I don't think he does. I was trying to remember. There was something about him not doing commentary tracks either. I think it's not along the same lines of Nolan not being able to get an idea out in the time that a scene has, but it's something about the fakeness of the falsehood. Nolan said something about that too, said it's different when a film gets received by an audience because then it becomes more of a discussion because it completes the experience versus talking about the film before it's actually released, which I don't really buy into it. So bring back commentary tracks. Let's find a way to make that happen. I don't know if they're available via digital purchase. I just find like the alternative, of course, is like a round table where you can see everybody sit around and talk about it. I find that a round table, well, fun and also insightful, even if it is an hour long or an hour and a half long. There are inevitably topics that don't get covered or scenes that don't get addressed. And the conversation becomes more organic and can go off the rails. And while what you get with a roundtable is illuminating, I find it only kind of goes like 20-25% of the way to what it could cover, unless you have a really, really direct kind of moderator or a very specific scene setup or questions or talking points. Because if we're going to sit and watch and hear people about a film, then let's go the distance. Let's not do something half baked, right? Silver Knight Kyle's chiming in once more. Says Missing Mom was absolutely incredible, sir. Well, thanks, man. Missing Mom, the tale of my brother and I hitting the road after quite some time trying to find our mom who disappeared for over 24 years. You can check it out. It's on YouTube. It's on Tubi. It's on Amazon Prime. It's everywhere, ladies and gentlemen. Check out Missing Mom. And if you do like my content, don't forget the Kickstarter is now live for my latest series, Planet Cool Stuff. What is PlanetCoolStuff? Well, it is 13 episodes jam-packed with pop culture goodness. You like pop culture, like the things we're talking about today, movies, TVs, music, video games, toys, and so much more, then you will love PlanetCoolStuff. Do you like Ninja Turtles? Do you like Star Wars, Mario games? Do you like Batman, comic books, horror comic books, monster movies? You'll love it. You like Ninja Turtles? You like retro gaming? Do you like current gaming? Planet Cool Stuff has it all for you. Do you like hearing from creators that made some of these things? Do you like hearing the tale behind the tale? We've got it covered in Planet Cool Stuff. Check it out on Kickstarter today. It's now live. I'm curious who's going to become our first heroic sponsor of Planet Cool Stuff. Who is going to have their company logo at the beginning of every single episode of Planet Cool Stuff? All 13. This is our first 13-part series that we've made. Everything else has kind of been 10 or less. Planet Cool Stuff, blazing new ground. And it sets up the future, right? Because what I've found with the Jay and Rob Toy Show, for example, both the podcast and the TV version, we're so like shoehorned into that narrow spectrum of what we can talk about because of what the title promises. It's great to narrowcast instead of broadcast. Isn't that one of those fancy terms? Because you're supposed to be preaching to your niche audience, right? You got the algorithm. You got to preach to the algorithm. Don't go above and beyond that. You'll lose everybody. They won't pay attention. You know what? I'm going to talk about what I love. And I happen to love more than just toys, more than just video games, more than just movies. I love it all. I love all the things that are cool, all the cool stuff, everything that's on this planet, Planet Cool Stuff. So that's what that's about. I would give an arm and a leg for an original commentary track on The Wizard of Oz with the directors and cast. Yeah, that would be a good one. Can you imagine? And, I think that there are commentary tracks for that film with like historians and film critics. Those are interesting, but it feels like, you're just sitting beside somebody in a film class rather than hearing from the people that made it and hearing their intents, which is what I truly, truly love. Any other thoughts, guys, on commentary tracks? I guess, if we're saying commentary tracks are somewhat like documentaries and that they're revealing information and giving you insights, where are we with pop culture documentaries and TV shows like Planet Cool Stuff? What's the deal with pop culture documentaries and TV shows? Where is it? And does it go too far? Does it go too little? It was a question that I had to really grapple with for Planet Cool Stuff because the show is set up as more or less 4 segments per half hour. So they're kind of like 6-minute chunks, right? Nothing too deep, but enough to get in and maybe get an interesting angle on the subject matter, and then you're out. Which is good because you bounce around a lot in an episode and you get to taste a little bit of the whole buffet. But it doesn't give you too much. So is that too little? Is that just enough? I think for some of the topics, it works perfectly. There are some topics we do a double segment and you get 12 minutes. But I don't know. Like I see a lot of these shows out there and I just find out it's like they're just looking for an in to talk about something. And then it doesn't really deliver. Like there was this show, I think it was on food from the 80s. And they talk about pizza, like, hey, pizza from the 80s. But then they basically just use it to talk about Ninja Turtles. And it's like, okay, this is like your gateway permission slip to talk about this other thing that you couldn't talk about unless you had this special hall pass to talk about it. It just, I don't know. John is saying I'm now somehow referred as the bad boy of filmmaking. Oh, I'm the bad boy. No, I'm not the bad boy of filmmaking. Actually, I play it pretty safe, I think. Don't you guys think? So do you find these shows are too few, too far between? Do they do enough justice? Do they not go far enough? Here's kind of where I sit on it. All right. You better have an interesting angle. I don't love doing just overviews. If you don't know it well enough, though, an overview is fine. But it just feels kind of like a waste of time because if I can read what you're producing on Wikipedia, I can probably save a lot of time. And unless your style is like mind blowing, I'm not sure that I'm going to be convinced, right? Like, give me a reason to watch. It's really why I like stuff like Action Figure Adventure and Nintendo Quest, because we get to do a documentary about the thing, but we're seeing a brand new story unfold, right? And it's one of the more compelling reasons why we took on Nintendo 64 Quest, because, yeah, we get to talk about Nintendo 64 without doing just a standalone history piece on the 64 and that era and that culture and that community. We get to see something new about it. Give me something new, right? This is what we're talking about. Entertainment expectations. I want the new. And that's, give me the same. Give me more of the same, only different, right? That's the other famous catchphrase. That's the famous catchphrase. Jay Bartlett's in the house. Yo, what's up, my friend? We're just talking about one of the compelling reasons why we did N64 Quest, and it's because it's not just a standalone documentary about the N64, which was an option that we could have made. We're getting a new story that takes place today that addresses the culture and the community of that stuff back then. And that's what I love. So when I see all these other pop culture shows out there that just kind of skim the surface and have like kind of a BS angle of why we're talking about like that food show, like, oh, let's talk about breakfast from the 80s, and we're going to use that to talk about the Breakfast Club. It's like, okay, stick to what the thing is supposed to be and really deliver. Don't use it as a backdoor entry point to get around so that you can talk about John Hughes films when you're really trying to talk about French toast. You know, give me the goods, add the maple syrup on top. So that's how I feel about those things. You guys ready to go on to the last topic? Let's talk best prequels here. Oh, that's my dog, Willie Nelson. I guess that's the sign to switch topics. Best prequels. You know, we talk about entertainment expectations. There's no greater expectation than something like a prequel, right? Is prequels a good idea? Are they a bad idea? You know, we're not talking reboots. We're talking prequels, because sometimes you get a reboot of a story, a franchise, or a saga that goes back before any of the other films. You know, I'm thinking something like Casino Royale with James Bond, where we get to see like his very first days as a 00 agent. That's not a prequel. That's a fresh reboot and a fresh new starting point where we get to go forward from that point on. Completely different than a prequel. A prequel, in this definition, is a film that comes in after an established timeline with the same continuity and canon, and decides to create an earlier chapter from everything else that we've seen. Okay. Has there been a good example of a prequel? Have we ever seen a good prequel that's been in the same continuity? John saying mostly a bad idea. They don't really add anything except for a backstory nobody was really asking for. And in fact, usually that backstory takes away the mystery and it demystifies what made the original story so great. It's like trying to explain and connect the dots a little too much. And when you connect the dots and color them in so specifically, it takes the magic out of it. A lot of people will be on the fence about the prequels. They've gained a lot of love in recent years. I'm talking about the Star Wars prequels, of course. But when we heard stuff like the Clone Wars, we didn't know what that was. It was just an idea that was dropped out there, referenced another time in an event when Obi-Wan and where Luke were talking. We got to wonder about that. We don't need to see it. In fact, just letting us wonder fuels the imagination and gets us way more excited than having you tell me what it is. That's the worst part, I think. Oh, we got a counterpoint here. Rad Toys. Here we go. I thought Star Wars did a great job of filling in the blanks. Well, do we need the blanks filled in, though? Do we? I've only got 3 examples of I think, prequels that work. And I don't know. One of them is a pretty bad idea. We're going to see what you guys think. Okay, so here we go. The first prequel that I think works, and it's actually, I think, the best film in the entire franchise. It's a soft reboot, I think, but it works. Everybody's favorite toy turned movie franchise, Transformers. I know you love Transformers, but the best film in that franchise is actually Bumblebee. All right. So I don't know what you think of the franchise. I don't know what you think of Bumblebee, but I think we'll be on the same page that saying Bumblebee is the best of all those chapters for a number of reasons. The character dynamics, the writing, that opening sequence that actually takes place on Cybertron, that feels like a live action version of our favorite cartoon from the 80s, or G1 expectations, entertainment expectations, remember. That prequel hits all the notes. I don't like how they really crossed some of the T's and dotted some of the I's in Bumblebee, but it really worked well. It was way more interesting than the first 17 films that came out that I remember and choose to forget. Jay Bartlett saying no, prequels don't add anything. Jeff Bellinger, Uncle Jeff. They're mostly created to generate more money as opposed to telling a story that doesn't really need to be told. Yes, there's always the cash incentive, right? If we can make money off something, we will do it. We don't necessarily have to do this for artistic reasons, but there are certainly financial ones. AJ is coming back. Talking TV. I'm enjoying Star Trek: Strange New Worlds. If you want to look at it as a prequel to the original series, well, this is an interesting one. You want to? We'll talk. Let's talk about Star Trek in a minute. Try to remind me before I get off course, and I know I will. So Bumblebee is my first pick. Temple of Doom. Right. This is kind of a gotcha, but Temple of Doom is technically a prequel. It takes place before Raiders. Did you know that? It actually takes place like 2 or 3 years before Raiders of the Lost Ark. And it works. I'm not a fan of Temple, but it's a good prequel. If we're talking strictly a prequel. How many of you hate me for actually calling Temple of Doom a prequel and not just admitting it's part of the trilogy? Okay, that's fine. I'll take the hate and I'll take the criticism. I've got the shoulders for it. I can do it. Okay. The last prequel I'll say is a good one. And again, this is kind of a gotcha because it's a soft reboot. It's technically totally a reboot because I think there was 4 films that came out for it, and some of them didn't come out. But it is connected to the original series franchise, and that would be X-Men First Class. I know. I'm going to give you a minute to hate on me. Okay, your minute's over. X-Men First Class, the cast is amazing in that film, and the way that they went back and told that story and yet still connected it to the original X-Men trilogy was just fantastic. It actually worked story-wise, and they allowed them to have more X-Men films without having to continue the story of those original ones, which weren't that great. I mean, the best things we got from the original X-Men films were Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, Patrick Stewart as Professor X, and those are kind of the big pieces that they kept. I mean, Ian McKellen was pretty good as Magneto as well, but Fassbender was way better as Magneto, I thought, in the past. So those are my 3 prequels that I think work the best. All right, we got some more comments in here. Rad Toys, I feel like Transformers is a pretty loose prequel. I would have loved an all Cybertron movie with no humans. Yes, I agree. There's no real continuity in the Bayverse. I don't know enough about it, but Bumblebee was a prequel technically, and so it worked. Okay, I think the Dinobots movie takes place after it. I don't know. See, I'm already getting lost in the continuity of Transformers. I just know that Bumblebee's a prequel because it took place in the 80s, and they went to painstaking measures to let me know it took place in the 80s, so I could feel good about my inner 80s child. Feels good about it. Okay, but it was actually a good movie. Travis Knight was the director of it. He also works with Leica, makers of Coraline, Box Trolls, and other favorite films. So it was set up for success, kind of with that person in charge. Again, Planet Cool Stuff is now live on Kickstarter, our 13-episode series that delves into all these pop culture, fun, fanatic discussions we're having. And I hope it lives up to your entertainment expectations, which is just, dancing around the buffet of all the stuff we love. Video games, toys, movies, TVs. I'm going to check in with you guys tomorrow. We're going to pick this up. Do you guys want to see an action figure spotlight? Okay, you do. All right. Action figure spotlight. Genghis Frog from Super 7. Now, a lot of you probably don't like the frogs. I love the frogs, of course. I'm a hipster TMNT fan like that. I love that they became friends of the turtles. Look at this. Look at this. Look at those eyes. There's a weird shade of creepy eyes there, and that tongue could be used for a custom Gene Simmons figure. I can't believe how bulky this is. I would have thought that he would have been shorter, a little smaller, given that he's a frog, but maybe not. Maybe not. A couple more thoughts on prequels are coming in here. Rogue One, not a good prequel for me. Didn't like the Hobbit films. I love the Hobbit films better than the regular Lord of the Rings films. Again, I'll give you a minute to hate me. Your minute is over. I just think they're more fun rather than serious. I don't need a serious, adventure trek like Lord of the Rings. They're good films. I just enjoy the Hobbit ones. They're a little bit more lighthearted. And that's what I need in life these days. Lighthearted experiences of cinema that last 3.5 hours every single viewing. As far as Star Trek Strange New Worlds, great show. I like it, but I think it actually takes place in a rebooted universe. And again, they're connecting the dots a little too much for my liking. The show in itself is great, but we don't need to know that it's the Enterprise or Spock or that Kirk is a part of it. And that's what makes the show strong. Anytime they lean on those elements, I find is when the show falls down for me. You take that stuff out, the show works completely fine on its own and probably would be stronger. In the same way that The Orville is a really strong show. And the second you take the comedy out, it becomes an outstanding sci-fi show. When you lean on the comedy like they did in season 1, it doesn't work as well. So those are my thoughts on that. We're getting a shout here that Cruella was pretty good. Again, this is a reboot, not a prequel. Cruella from 101 Dalmatians is the beginning of a new story going forward. If they decide to do a chapter that takes place somewhat earlier, then we're talking a prequel. So thanks for tuning in, guys. This is your daily dose of Planet Cool Stuff. Again, check out the Kickstarter for Planet Cool Stuff and get yourself a copy of our 13-episode series on DVD or Blu-ray. Be an executive producer, associate producer, or you could be a heroic sponsor and have your logo in front of every episode. I love you guys. Take care.